Live. All right, it's the Ryan Randy morning show.
Afternoon.
Afternoon show. No, it's Ask Beers TV. You know, I didn't have an episode on Friday, so you know what? I just got to keep it rolling, though. I mean, we can't miss episodes just because we screwed up on Friday. Going to mess up on Monday too, man. So 3 o'clock every Monday, we're going to do one of these live guys. And invited Randy.
You invited me.
I don't know. I just thought it was too boring alone. So let's see how it goes. So today we're going to talk about additives, and for those of you who don't know, I think the following week, this week's actually about the cycle.
Oh, that one's been long awaited.
Yeah,
4-month cycle.
This week on Friday we're going to be talking about that 4-month cycle that everybody's talking about, and you know, it's easily the most asked question, but I'm not going to answer that one today. So I answer in full on Friday, and then on Monday, man, we'll get back to it and answer real questions. Well, we're going to leapfrog a little bit. The week after, we're going to talk about additives, or not additives, but major, minor, and trace element chemistry, how to do that for the hybrid system. And today, we'll just talk about additives for fun, you know, kind of like preempt that just a little bit, get everybody's like juices flowing, you know, thinking about additives and whatnot. All right, so what we're going to do is answer questions here from Facebook and YouTube. It looks like YouTube's already got 120 people rolling, so feel free to answer your questions. I just plucked out a couple, you know, just to get the whole thing going. All right. Now, maybe I should quiz Randy here, actually. All right, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I may have answered some of these product questions.
Okay, well, all right. How many gallons will 7 pounds of bicarbonate make?
Oh, I'm going to say gallons of solution for 7 pounds. I'm going to say in the ballpark of like 5, 6. How many?
It's 12 gallons of. I know, because the bicarbonate mixes up to half strength.
This is the new pharma stuff.
Yep, but it mixes up to half strength. You still only use a quarter, 1 cup and a quarter instead of 2 cups for soda ash. So I knew that was going to get you.
Got me.
So yeah, well, 1 gallon or 7 pounds rather of sodium bicarbonate makes 12 gallons of bicarbonate alkalinity.
Yeah, so if you're using sodium bicarb as your daily additive to your tank, now that's like a 2-to-1 ratio, more or less. You know, we talk about equal 2-part dosing. So there's with soda ash and calcium chloride, with the the standard mixes that we have, that's like almost 1-to-1 dosing. If I'm doing like 40 mils of one, I'm probably doing 40 mils of the other, or pretty close. Sodium bicarb's more of like a 2-to-1, where you're dosing more sodium. Why is that? Why would it's just the recipe?
It's because it dissolves. Only so much of it will dissolve in the water. So that's a max right there. Hey, scroll up on YouTube here. There was a question I just thought was kind of interesting. Hey guys, there's a water boil advisory in my area. Is using RODI system safe to use the water that comes out of it? Water boil, I think, means there's probably like a pathogen.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these filters aren't good enough for that. So like some of them will have like a silver impregnated into the carbon and whatnot, and they're for killing pathogens like that. But I would not use a standard RO one and assume that you could not boil your water. You know, especially if your city's telling you that, it's probably pretty bad. So, anyway, I thought that was an interesting question. All right. Keep your additive things going. You look for another one here. I'm just going to keep rattling off a couple.
Hey, bring your questions in about additives. That's what we're talking about today. And
I got one.
Go ahead.
All right. In relation to Triton, how do you have an estimate on monthly costs? All right. I mean, like, how much do you think it costs to do Triton? I don't think we have an answer here.
No, we've tried to. I don't know if we've tried to answer that. So, hey, for the 160, it was. So you've got your regular Core 7, and those are what, like 40-some bucks a kit or something like that. I can't remember the last time I looked. But we're dosing like 40 mils of that, 50 mils of that a day. So you have that, probably a 1,000 mil bottle will last you maybe around a month or so. We don't dose the entire line of elements, or we didn't have to dose the entire line of elements, so you save costs there.
So one thing would, or 1 liter would last a month in this tank?
No, more like half a month. More like
3
weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
And how much is it for one of those things?
The kit, I think the entire kit of Core 7, the 1,000 mils. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe like $50, I think.
Okay, so it's significantly more expensive than some options like.
But you're getting trace. Well, yeah, but you're getting trace elements and stuff in there too. So.
This is true. You're getting all the other stuff. I will say this. I looked at their base elements, and for those of you that saw all those pharma-related videos that we did, The one that I chose is like the aquarium additive 1 was the most expensive calcium alkalinity additive on the website, and I just wanted to represent the best that you could get against ours. And I thought for sure it'd be Triton. And it wasn't, actually, not even by a long shot. So it was actually a lot cheaper. And so this one said the monthly cost is actually going to be relative. So I'll just say straight up, if you're buying Triton because you think it's going to be the cheapest thing out there, wrong. I mean, that is definitely not going to be the cheapest possible option. It's going to be what, people are shooting for, the best option, where you're trying to maintain all of your elements as close to natural seawater as possible and then test for it.
John asked a good question. Yeah, we got plenty of questions out. John asked a good one right there on YouTube. Is there a balance ratio that your tank should be consuming in regards to alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium? This is something that we've done with the 2-part dosing. So soda ash, and like I was mentioning earlier, soda ash and calcium chloride mixed into solution typically doses about the same in equal ratios. And then after you've gone through what we had these starter packages where after you've gone through a gallon of each one of those, normally dosed equally, then you would take 20 ounces of magnesium mix, that's the magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate, and mix those together and dose the whole 20 ounces at once. And that usually kept people's tanks in balance, I think. But there's probably more to it, do you think?
Yeah, well, there's another question up there. Scroll up a little bit on YouTube's.
YouTube's coming in with the questions. Pretty heavy.
I know. Jose there. Do you think it's possible to overdose Red Sea color program if it's dosed, or he's dosing based on calcium consumption?
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Because you're dosing it based on calcium consumption, it's probably no different than dosing like an all-in-one kind of solution in terms of the ability to overdose it because it's in ratio to the amount of calcium we're adding. So like if I had say ESV or whatever inside that bottle, it's obviously in ratio to the amount of calcium and alkalinity I'm using. So if you stay within that, it's unlikely that you're going to overdose it. But obviously not impossible, especially if you mess up the math or something in there. Anytime you're dosing any kind of element, there's always a risk of overdosing it. But I think that's kind of the beauty of it. And I believe the reason that those different trace elements are in there is so they can maintain more of them. Because it's really difficult to get all of them to stay in solution, and not precipitate out inside a true 2-part. So unlikely you're going to overdose it, but possible. One of the things though, they do have them in there in ratio to each other in groups, so you can use the test kits.
Yeah, there is a 4-part test kit that Red Sea has. It's part of the Trace Colors program. So you use the 4-part Trace Colors program, and if you go in there, I did a video about this actually, where I break down what they say each one does, and it's some of them like if you want reds, or if you're looking if this one will bring out reds, this one will bring out pinks, this one will bring out oranges. But in relation to that, instead of dosing, there's another way to dose it. Like most people will probably choose the based on calcium consumption, which is the easiest. And is also one that you can tie to other 2-part solutions. Like if you're using our 2-part solution, you can tie the calcium consumption to the Red Sea Trace, and that was a video we also did. But there is the 4-part test kits, like iodine. It's testing based off the major lead elements. So there's a whole lot of elements in each one of these bottles, but there's 1 or 2 particular lead elements in each one, and you base off a consumption of those on how much you dose. It's another way to do it, and then more test kits that you can get into. Personally, I opt for the calcium one.
So yeah, just for the people out there, the Red Sea stuff, I believe anyway, the calcium one is just calcium chloride. So you can use ours if you want it. Mm-hmm. Like you said, there's a video that is doing the math on that. Yeah. I believe the alkalinity is just sodium bicarbonate. So you could use that, or you could use soda ash and have the elevated pH if you wanted. And then I think magnesium is just a mix of magnesium sulfate and the calcium one has strontium in it too. I forgot.
That's true. Yeah.
So you can dose that separately if you wanted. I got one here, Ryan. If WWC feeds their coral every hour in the hour, even the frag tanks, how do we acclimate them to our feeding schedule? So that's kind of like an additive. If I'm dumping in blended up food or whatnot to the tank. I mean, you're like a do-it-yourself additive, really. You know, people are dosing amino acids and particulate foods and stuff. If I take up a piece of tilapia or whatever, which is a big portion of the food that they feed, you know, they're just blending it up, man, and like all kinds of particles are going around. You know, like, I mean, you can see like, you know, every size chunk of seafood has made it into there, and they're feeding, you know, reefroids in there and some other stuff inside, mixed up inside that, some amino acids too.
Yeah.
So, you know, to that question, how do you acclimate them to your feeding schedule? So you got to keep in mind that it isn't necessarily that all of you need to feed every hour on the hour. It's just that in that tank, man, they have so many corals, man. Uptake of overall nutrition in the tank is just sky high. So, like, you know, they have to replace it pretty darn frequently or it'll fall back down. So, and, you know, and we're not talking about phosphate and nitrate falling up and down like that. I'm talking about the availability of amino acids and other types of dissolved nutrients or even particulate foods like that. So, you know, they keep bare bottom so the stuff is suspended as long as possible. But the reality is I think what people are going to do when you get to that point and you kind of have that level of food, you'll do what we're doing. You know, we have an auto feeder on there that feeds the reef chili and pellets and stuff. And, you know, it just isn't realistic to use, like, you know, a frozen or fresh food in there all the time. So you can even put it on a dosing pump and dose, you know, Acro Power or something if you wanted to. So, you know, it's not realistic for nearly anyone to do on the hour, but that isn't, like, the message here that you have to do that to be successful. It's just kind of bringing home, man, that, like, you know, part of the whole nutrient system, man, is protein, you know, and elements of protein, you know, because you need to build tissue, you know, and just sugar from, you know, photosynthesis basically produces a simple sugar, like the zooxanthellae produces basically more sugar than it needs for its own metabolic processes, and then releases that sugar like into the coral tissue, and then the coral uses it for energy. And so sugar doesn't build tissue on its own, you know. So add in the sources of nitrogen, phosphorus, and things that build up protein are important. You just don't need to do it on the hour every hour. And if you did, you could use an auto feeder. Mm-hmm. All right, you pick one.
Still up here on YouTube. We're going to get down here. We got to get some of these questions on Facebook going, but I did see Keith's question up here on YouTube. How important is double, triple testing to ensure accuracy, and how can we improve the accuracy of a single test? So, great question. And I mean, this has to do with with additives, especially the major foundation elements. That calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium. I would venture to say that we've gotten to the point in test kits of alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium that there's a variety of good ones out there, and you can trust pretty well. We're talking your Saliferts, your Red Seas, your Hannah checkers, all of these different ones. But really, how do you make a single test more accurate? The same repeatable procedure every single time. So, Ryan and I always talk about, hey, sometimes that change from blue to pink in your titration might be different from what he thinks turned into blue and what I think turned into blue. But as long as you personally do it the same every time and you feel that's the same one that I had last time, and you conduct the test the same each way. Where me personally, I use a graduated syringe. I pull 10 mils. I dose it to the little vials. Whether or not that lines up with the line on the vials, some people say it doesn't. Some people say it does. Whether or not, I'm going to do it that same time or that same way each time to improve the accuracy of that one test. You may fill up that same vial to the line each time, and as long as it's the same each time, you can kind of get an idea of where you're, these are hobby grade test kits, so it's not like you're sending the stuff into labs. It's not like you have a laboratory in your own home, for accuracy, but they're accurate enough to where you can monitor trends and things like that, and make adjustments if need be. And the reason for using multiple tests is specifically that, like, I probably won't do a multiple test if I don't feel the need for it, but if something's way out of whack, like I test alkalinity one day, and it's like 3 points higher than normal, I'm going to conduct another test. I'm going to conduct multiple tests just to verify, rather than go make changes based off of that one. So
what I'd say in relation to this is it's not, like he just said, almost verbatim, is it's not about accuracy, it's about consistency. Yeah. And so I just want to make sure that however I'm doing this, it's the same all the time. And if I get anticipated results, I would never repeat the test. So, like, it's close enough. Mm-hmm. If your tests are like way out of whack, man, like I would say 9 times out of 10, if somebody calls up here and asks a crazy question like, "Oh, my pH or my alkalinity is like here or there," crazy off. Like, hey man, when in doubt, if your parameters are telling you something crazy, it is almost certainly testing procedure or the test kit itself, and almost every time it's that. It's more likely that than that your tank's really got a 3 DKH, or your alkalinity or your pH is really 10. And so one of the things that drives me crazy, here, and I think we've all been guilty of this at some point in time of our reefing hobby, so, bear with me, is how many people, use their, hobby grade test kit. Your alkalinity and your salt mix is supposed to be 9, the test kit tells me it's 8. Oh man, like this is a bad batch, whatever. And I'm not going to say a bad batch has never happened, because some of them actually have said that they do. But in general, man, your ability to do a hobby grade test kit at home versus like salt, maybe it's off, but just as likely, I'm not reading this sheet of blue when it changed at the exact moment that it changed at the right play. I didn't follow the procedure absolutely perfectly. And a lot of these tests openly state, a 5% change, in a plus or minus. Yeah. What's 5% 420 calcium? That's like 20-some points in either direction. Yeah. So my, 420 could be 400 or it could be 440. And be accurate to the standard that's on this test kit. Yeah. So, and then even the more crazy to me, actually, is sometimes, you're like, I don't know, this one doesn't make any sense. So I go do a Red Sea one instead of the Sallyford I just did. Completely different. One of them says 10, and then one of them says 8 or something. And they're like, well, the Sallyford one's wrong because my Red Sea one said that. Like, well, what makes you think one's better than the other one? There's no real reason to believe that. And so the reality is man, nobody here wants to buy an $80, $120 lab grade test kit. Maybe you do. I don't know, but most people don't. So, what we have is, getting us into the ballpark. And I don't even think anybody really wants to hear that, but it's true. We're just trying to get consistent numbers inside of a safe zone. And again, that's why we're talking about alkalinity. What do you use?
What's my number?
Your number?
My alkalinity number, 8.5 DKH.
Mine's 9. And the reason for both of those is the exact same thing. Is so, if it was really 7 because our testing skills are terrible, so be it. But if I was shooting for 7, that means that his terrible testing skills would be like 5.8. Yeah, it'd be terrible. So if, you're right in the middle there, it's less important that it gets perfect every single time. Yeah. All right, shoot.
Okay, let's take a look down here. I've been trying to see off the side. What is your opinion on liquid reef by Brightwell? Yeah, that's a good one. Have we used it? Rick asks, what's your opinion on liquid reef by Brightwell Aquatics compared to other products similar? I use it in a mixed reef in the off weeks between bi-weekly water changes.
You know what? I never used a Brightwell product. I don't know. Have you?
No, I can't say.
Yeah, so there's lots of tube pouch out there I haven't actually used. I used ESV like a million years ago. It's probably the first one I ever used. Yeah. Then, Two Little Fishes has one. What's that called?
Their trace element stuff?
No, I just said AB product.
Oh, yeah, 2 bottles.
Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of them out there. Honestly, I think they're probably all very similar. And I've never heard anybody show definitive different results between any of those 2 parts out there. And so I call a lot of commercials. So, I'm sure if Brightwell was here, they would love to raise their hand and say ours is better because of X, Y, and Z. And in reality, my expectation would be that it produces very similar results. The one difference, though, was I know in their magnesium portion of that whole thing, they actually came out better than ours. That's true. That was like the one test of all of them through kalkwasser and alkalinity and calcium and all the different things, whereas they actually edged us out in quality on the magnesium. So I don't know. Outside that, I wouldn't say go use it and expect miracles.
No, I personally. The way I feel about it is if it's easy for me to understand, and other reefers I've seen use it on the forums and stuff like that, and the dosing instructions are pretty easy, it's something I consider. Probably. Yeah.
Hey, there's Keith down here on Facebook too, man. I like this one. Hey guys, I'm using a calcium reactor with 2 Little Fishes, Reborn, and Remag. Do I need to dose trace elements if I'm using Red Sea trace colors? And exactly how do I figure out the calcium consumption with a calcium reactor? Yeah, that's like a 2-part question here. And the first portion of it is, do you need to? One of the things that I want to do here is, and I haven't gotten around to it, but I want to go ahead and like set up a calcium reactor, get it to like maximum solubility. So like, you know, I think it's like 40 DKH with most pHs in there. And send the tank water through it, you know, or even some just salt water or whatnot, and then send in ICP before and after. And then we can see actually what trace elements and in what concentration are they actually being added to the tank. My suspicion is with some, especially like the Reborn, which is very obviously little bits of acro and other types of corals, I fully anticipate seeing a variety of trace elements, you know, pop up in there and kind of end that question of whether or not they're in there. You know, with some of the other ones that look like a little bit more like grains of sand, you know, sand was, you know, calcium presumably at one point in time, so maybe the same thing. I bet you, though, there'll be differences between some of the different medias in terms of trace elements. Yeah, I bet you also there'll be some surprises, like there'll probably be some phosphate and stuff in there.
And I wonder if I wonder how many trace elements are actually like in the tissues or in the zooxanthellae and stuff like that probably wouldn't make it into the skeleton. Then you might be deficient on like a little bit of this, but you know, have some in here.
Yeah, end of story. You know what it is I've seen so many people be successful with, you know, like calcium chloride and sodium carbonate, and decent water changes, the decent salt that you know, you can get by without, you know, trace elements per se. I'm sure there's benefits. There's no question. Like, I mean, we could probably go on for hours about like perceived benefits that are real. Anything getting close to seawater versus not is going to probably produce some results. It's not necessarily required, but if you can, like with the trace or with the calcium reactor meter, like let's say I could get 70% of them. Man, home run.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it was done automatically. I didn't have to buy any products or anything. So, yeah, I mean, I really hope to find that one out. The second portion of the question is how do I figure out the calcium consumption with a calcium reactor? So let's just presume that 0 trace elements was in there and it was only calcium and carbonate ions, and that isn't going to be the case. So being that is the case, it's going to be really hard to figure out. But the beauty of that trace colors with Red Sea is that it's based on calcium, you know, addition. So you can actually do the math, test the, you know, parts per million of the effluent coming out of your, you know, calcium reactor, and do the math on how much you're actually adding to the tank, and then do the math backwards to get your, you know, trace element ABC thing. I got to be honest. That would be pretty nerdy, and I don't think many people would do it. You know, that, I mean, you're really going to get into it, and at that point, like, in reality, there's probably some trace elements coming out of that calcium reactor media.
Yeah. It's
time to ICP test and check your theory.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, if I'm going to get that far into it, I better make sure what I'm doing is making sense.
That brings up a good point about just the ICP in general, whether or not you're using the Triton method or some other method of like adding 2-part or adding, you know, major foundation elements back in. Is like you can send in an ICP test. And then if you're deficient on one of these other ones or one of these other ones, they're individual. They're available individually. So maybe your calcium reactor is not putting in iodine or something like that. Well, now I have a little bottle here, and I could drop some in my tank.
So this is what I also this is a good point, man. So you know, like the ICP thing, you know, it's not perfect, and it's just a new tool to the hobby, right? Yeah. And you know, like people on the forums and stuff get lost in like the whole debate about this and does it test that perfect or does it test this thing perfect? And the answer is no, it doesn't. And it's not being done in a $1,000 shot lab, meaning that like like university professors are in there doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just done in an economical manner where for $50, man, I can get a really solid window into my tank that I've never gotten before, True. Especially if the results are repeatable. And they have been for us. I mean, we've sent in tons of samples where you send in 3, and I haven't found one where they didn't match, you know. So they're not labeled or anything where anybody figured that out. So I've been pretty impressed with that. And the thing about it, though, is, you know, people get lost in some of that stuff, again, the accuracy. Like, you know, it openly states, man, on the calcium and stuff, like this tool is designed to measure into like parts per billion, you know, or trillion in some cases, you know, like not at 420 parts per million calcium. So it's just not accurate at both of those ranges. Okay, yeah, and so if it's off on calcium, man, by like 5-10%, it's a big window, 10%. You know, that 10% of 420, man, means it could be 380 and it'd be accurate, you know. So, you know, it's not the greatest tool for, I would never use it for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium personally. I just got better tools in my house. I can do it right there. I'm worried about those things I can't test for, and that's the things that, in fact, I'd prefer if they just strip that stuff out of there because it's misleading, I think. But this is how I think is a really cool tool for ICP for at home. You know, you're sitting there debating, like, should I use the XYZ product because it's got trace elements in it? Hey, man, I do really good water changes. Do I really even need the trace elements? Can I just use bulk material? And, like, what that ends up is like an endless debate on the forums. You know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with no real knowledge on it, you know, just guessing. And in this case, I can actually implement what my plan is, send the thing out. It doesn't have to be all the time. I get it twice a year, you know, just to like kind of make sure I got a pulse on, like, I'm not just totally screwing up the chemistry in my tank, you know, doing whatever I thought was right, you know. And send it in, and it turns out, like, you know what, a couple of these things are slightly depleted. You know what, though? Like,
slightly.
Yeah, I don't know, man. How much I want to spend a nut slightly? Not much, man. I really don't. You know, unless you're just like, unless, you know, mad scientist is part of the fun, you know, which I don't think most people is, especially because it costs money to be a mad scientist.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and so like I would use that ICP test that way, is just to make sure no matter what additive solution you pick, you know, make sure it works the best. And there's lots of questions about what ICP tests out there, you know.
Oh, yeah, Triton, ATI. You know,
water testing labs.
Yeah, there's a guy in Colorado,
I think
that
Coral
does
View
it.
does it with them. Yeah. ATI does one.
Yeah.
And Triton. Yeah. We only stock Triton here. And I guess here's the reason why. I guess, and forgive me for all the people that support all the other ones or, you know, whatnot. This is not an easy thing. This testing all these things at that low level is not an easy task. Some of it is actually kind of like creating an algorithm to guess it to the best of their ability. And the fact is I've seen enough people send out the same sample to 4 of these places and get totally different results at each one of them. And you can't like test one against the other one and say for sure that I don't know, AB got it right. You know, you don't know. You know, you really don't know. So the end of the story, man, you just got to pick one that you trust and trust that one to the best of your ability. And for me, I tend to go to the thought leaders on this thing instead of the Me Too's, and go to the people that you like started doing this. And I can't remember which one it was, but Jake Adams told me I needed to go to the Triton booth at an Interzoo. Must have been 7 years ago, man. Yeah, and so a really long time ago. And so 7 years ago, I mean, they've been doing this that long over in Germany, refining it, perfecting it, getting the accuracy right. And so just out of default, I look at these guys, Triton, as the leaders and the ones that I trust the most, and that's why we sell that one, and we don't sell the other ones currently. That doesn't mean that we won't sell them, especially if we decide that, you know, it kind of meets our standard, or, you know, it's so much cheaper that even lower degree of accuracy, you know, provides value, then maybe we do that. But, yeah, I don't know, that's what we use.
Yeah.
All right.
Misfit Reefer here on YouTube is asking, hey, Ryan and Randy, aren't you using a 2-part combined into one now? Something Reef by Tropic Marin or something. Yeah, that's either the carbocalcium, but the one with trace elements is the same thing, which is called All for Reef, or All for Reef, right? Yeah, and that's actually something that Zach's using on his tank. He's been at it for like 3 months, 4 months now on his tank. SPS dominated 60-gallon system, a one single source of calcium, of the calcium carbonate and carbonate in the tank, and it's calcium formate, which yeah, I mean, you could break that one down a little further.
Yeah,
but I'm still expecting to do a video on this one because Lou over at Tropic Marin has given. He's just full of information, and he's anytime you want to talk about this stuff, let me know. So I got to sit down with him and like really break this stuff down into how it works, and then like come up with a video to like set this straight.
Lou, if you're watching, you owe us free lunch or something. Because, you know, we're spreading the news in this one. You know what? Actually, I think Jake, again, man, was one of the first people to spread the news in this one. But,
yeah, he was. Yeah.
You know, for us, I got to tell you, we've been using it. I know if you've been watching this, you saw the tank that Zach has. If you watch my Instagram or anything, you've seen the zoanthid and now the LPS tank that's running on that. It's just like 10 or 15 milliliters a day. And it is calcium formate. And so the difference here is like calcium hydroxide is the only other, like, not only, but the only popular option for adding calcium and alkalinity. And the reason for that is I add the calcium hydroxide to the water, and the calcium ionizes off and adds calcium. The hydroxide interacts with the carbon dioxide in the water to form carbonate, right? So essentially I'm adding, calcium and carbonate to the tank in separate forms. If I added calcium carbonate to the tank, I'd be adding sand or rock, essentially, and it wouldn't dissolve, which is good because our coral skeleton's made out of calcium carbonate. If it dissolved in the tank, we'd be in, bad news. So in this case, the calcium formate, prior to that, there was actually a thing called calcium citrate. And the citrate would have the calcium go in. The citrate would be, metabolized by bacteria in the tank and come out as carbonate, right? So it was like a really long tail thing that actually produced the carbonate, but the calcium was readily available, but it produces it in equal amounts. Problem is the citrate formed all kinds of, or reduced the oxygen in the tank too much, right? Yeah. The fromate does not have the same degree of issue. So, you won't reduce the oxygen as long as you're like in some kind of, reasonable level. And I can tell you we've cranked it up pretty high with a pretty high SPS tank, and not an issue with any of his fish. So, in this case, I'm adding calcium and I'm adding formate. Formate is metabolized by the bacteria, turns into carbonate. We have calcium carbonate again.
And at the concentration, like that's the amazing part to me is the concentration. So when you're talking about calcium hydroxide or kalkwasser, this is something that's, you can only mix 2 teaspoons into a gallon of water to make max saturation, and that's going to hold you up to a certain point of demand. There's, say if I was trying to do this tank only on an ATO of fully saturated kalk, now that's just one solid source. It's different when you're doing like kalkwasser stir where you can constantly feed in max saturation. But if I'm doing it in an ATO box where I'm limited to the amount that I can put in one, in a single day or what have you, then I'm limited to how much calcium and alkalinity consumption that my ATO box of kalkwasser can keep up with. But when you're talking about the all-for-one or the carbocalcium, it's nearly as strong as like standard 2-part.
I think it's stronger.
It's stronger than
slightly.
So, which means now on a tank like this where I was dosing 150 mils a day of alkalinity and calcium, that same one single solution at a slightly reduced amount is going to keep up with the same demand, and it's scalable too.
I'm going to butcher this, but just reference point, I had my first 90s filled with corals, and I'd use 2 gallons of kalkwasser a day from my top off in this tank, right? Okay, the same amount of probably this Alpha Reef stuff would be like that same gallon, instead of lasting me half a day, it would last me a month.
Yeah.
Right, and so like 2-part, I can put one thing underneath my sump, underneath my stand or in the sump area, and instead of I'd have to have a 100-gallon tank somewhere full of kalkwasser. It's just not viable. And so, and you can also have one dosing pump.
Yeah, that's
right.
A good one.
Yeah, and so now I could go buy like a 1 BRS doser, for like $70 or whatever it is, and I'm done. I can dose. The only worry about one pump, and I don't have to worry about the pumps dosing the same amounts anymore either, because it's a balanced solution inherently. So, again, Lou at Trout and Marin, you owe me lunch. All right.
And Michael wanted to know how much we bench. 2 5-gallon buckets when I do water changes. That's it. Down here on Facebook, I like Nicole's question here. ICP testing before or after a water change?
I'll let you go first.
So before or after a water change, I'm probably in the boat of I'm in the boat of doing mine there, setting mine halfway. Probably, I don't know. Right after a water change, maybe an hour or 2 after, then you probably get a good idea of this is after you've diluted. So if you have pollutants in the tank, if you have elevated levels in the tank of say elevated elements that you may not want in there, those are going to reveal themselves probably after the water change, after everything's diluted out, and now I can have a baseline of what to expect until the next water change. Well, if I'm starting this, say I'm doing a test of once a month, and theoretically I'm doing a water change once a month. Well, as soon as my 1 month water change is over, and I give it the system some time to level out at like maybe 2 hours, take a water sample, send it in, and by the time I get my results, I have an idea of, hey, I'm elevated and I'm ready for the next water change to bring that down, or I may have to do larger water changes to bring that down, rather than just before doing a water change, my elevated elements are this high, I send in a water sample, but while I'm waiting for the water sample, I do a water change. Now, when it's telling me to react, I may have already diluted the problem, if I do a water change beforehand.
Oh, gosh, man, this is a good question. So the answer is, if you're doing like 10% water changes, it doesn't matter, man. Stop thinking about it. It doesn't make any difference.
True.
Like a test ain't going to read the difference.
Yeah.
I thought when you said it was stupid, but I'm going to go with
halfway.
Halfway might be the best. This is why. I probably wouldn't really do halfway, but there's a good solid reason. If you did it before, basically you're going to test how bad my water got before I did a water change, right? Theoretically you could just adjust. I did a 30% water change, but you don't really know what's in your water change water either, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Right? So, but you can see how bad it got, right? If I did it before. However, if I do it after, I'm measuring, the quality of my water as part of my normal maintenance rhythm, right? And so, the things I'm doing to fix my water, because what, Triton will tell you is, don't do a water change until the thing tells you to. And, I found that works, that it does work, and it just means that you got to send these test kits in all the time. And ultimately, you have to listen to them too. When it comes back and it says, "Hey, do a water change," go do it, because the nature of this is you haven't been doing them until it tells you to. And then when it does, don't treat it like it's a optional thing to do, man. It's saying, "Hey, things are off, man, fix it," because you haven't been doing water changes before. Now it's time. In their essence, I guess you would do it before a water change, because you wouldn't even do a water change unless it told you to. If you're going to do it anyway, and I'm just making sure, again, I'm going to do this thing, man, maybe every quarter or twice a year, once a year, and then I guess I'd probably do it after my water change, just because I know that that's part of the rhythm, and what I'm doing, it's telling me whether I'm doing is working or not.
Yeah,
I don't know. Good enough. Or
I'll watch.
Do what Randy says and do it right in the middle.
Halfway.
Yes, right in the middle, man. All right. What else we got
there
here?
was one up here with. There we go. How do you feel? Okay, TJ Howell wants to know how we feel about dosing bacteria once a month to promote different strains.
You want to go first? I'll go first.
I went first last time.
I gotta tell you, it just sounds like total garbage to me. I'm sorry to all the bacteria people out there. I don't know, man. I don't know. It just we've been fed a lot of snake oils and magic elixirs over the years. Now there's some out there, man, where I guess I would absolutely do it. Like the Zeovit one, it's just part of their whole system, man. It's ultra low nutrients. They want certain bacteria strains to be dominant, and the nature of the whole Zeovit system is, follow this thing. Everybody who's done it this way produces this kind of results.
And there's a community that backs it, though, too.
Yeah, and the Zeovit thing's actually been around longer than I have, or at least in the hobby, So, this is 20-year thing. So, they got me beat by maybe 5 years. So, it produces results. So in that case, if there's a really refined thing, man, I would follow it. I wouldn't decide that I know better than everybody else out there. And at some point, you just got to trust the manufacturers are doing what's right for you, especially in systems that are producing results. But in general, it's really hard, man. I believe the process. I believe the process, in the tank, there's this magical warfare that's happening, inside this tank. And, on every surface, cyano and diatoms and dinos and natural good bacteria are all duking it out, trying to figure out who's going to win this space, right? And, a lot of times the ones that have get energy from photosynthesis win the fastest, right? But there's a lot of these bacterias and bacteria booster products, like the waste away.
Yeah.
So the waste away, eliminated the cyano and helped, whatever beats up cyano, win the battle. And the sad part of it is if you go to all those Dr. Tim's products, is there's a solution for everything, but the EPA won't allow you to sell your product saying that it kills anything pesticide, herbicide, or anything like that, without going through a whole slew of stuff that you would do if you're going to sell Roundup to 8 million people, but probably more farmers, whatever. Yeah. But not to a handful of reefers ain't worth it doing. So he sells all these solutions that are probably solutions that you can't even say he does. So it's really up to the reefers
to try it out.
I don't know. What do you think about the bacteria stuff?
I've done it before. I've fallen. I don't know if I'd say fallen into that, but I had that level. I had that mentality a while ago because, we were talking about the Protibio or Prodibio or whatever you want to call it. They have different strains of bacteria, and for logically thinking that maybe it does make sense to diversify the bacteria. I don't know personally how many strains of bacteria convert ammonia over to nitrate. If some of those different strains of bacteria convert nitrate into nitrogen gas. So I'm more effectively getting rid of nitrates by adding different strains of bacteria. I don't know, but there is Dr. Tim out there on the forums now answering questions about his stuff. So, if you had some real questions about it, he is he's a microbiologist. Dr. Tim. He's out there answering some of these questions too, and kind of giving a better explanation than I could give. So I was there at one point in time, but I've also seen success, 100 different ways in this hobby, and not everybody, actually a very small handful, probably even less than a handful of group of people, diversified their bacteria and had really good, awesome looking tanks. So it doesn't have to. You don't have to.
All right, I'm gonna go flip flop. I forgot, man. I mean, I just. It's hard on these things where you can't definitively prove it.
Nobody's really done this research.
So at one point, man, everybody thought those cycle, products. Cycle the tank. InstaCycle were snake oil products. And I gotta tell you, we use them here all the time, and I don't think we ever kill any fish. And so there's never an ammonia spike, man. It just works. So those products absolutely work. And it was actually interesting, man. I was talking to Jeremy over at Brightwell, and they sell that Microbacter 7 stuff, and he was actually promoting that you don't just use his product, but it's hey, if you're going to start a brand new tank, promote as many strains of bacteria, beneficial ones, as possible. And he's like, yeah, you could use Dr. Tim's, you could use the Prodibio startup and stuff in there. And I'm like, oh, Jeremy, I don't know, man. That's tell people to use all these things. That sounds like kind of a lot, And then, what, man? I was writing the whole 4-month cycle process. Yeah. And over at Worldwide, they use exclusively the Microbacter 7. Here, we've, I don't know, by default, just used the Dr. Tim's one and only, almost exclusively. Yeah. And then I thought about it, man. I'm like, hey, I want to start up a brand new tank. I want to let the good bacteria beat all of the pests. I mean, I'm probably going to run into some issue in a new tank, right? But I want to limit that as much as possible. And so we do the good, better, best strategy. And I'll just give it away, a little spoiler alert here. On the XL750, we're going to dose the Prodibio, the Microbacter 7, the Dr. Tim's, because the stuff isn't that expensive. And for me, in the reefing, ounce of cure, 8 million pounds, ounce of prevention, 8 million pounds of cure. In fact, it's not even on the same scale. After the stuff shows up, dealing with it is a giant pain in the butt. If you can prevent any of the stuff in the beginning, I'll pay $20 just to close my eyes and hope for the best. Because it's just trying to avoid diatoms and dinos and all that kind of stuff, and make sure that the things we want to win in the tank's worth it. Now here we've all started with the Dr. Tim's, and they started out with the Brightwell. So on the 180 or the E170, I'm going only Brightwell's Microbacter 7. Oh, yeah. And so we'll get to see the difference. I mean, it won't be anything definitive, we should all use 3 of these things. But, if you got a little bit of money burning your hole in your pocket at the time, you're I really, really want to avoid this stuff at all costs. I mean, it's almost like eating an organic banana. It was the normal one wasn't going to kill me, but I feel better about this one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Also, I'll note, our knowledge on these bacteria is kind of, changed and like evolved, and the things that we're looking for are just different. Back in the day, a lot of those bacteria products were refrigerated. And that's because, some of the most aggressive or best options for just changing over ammonia into nitrite and nitrate, there are actually bacteria that are best refrigerated. So if you find a refrigerated product, it probably will work better at that. But it's completely missing the other beneficial bacteria for it. And so, there's other processes on the surface of the rock that if you put those things in there, they actually would outcompete each other. And so, like in those refrigerated products, they don't work as well, with some of the other things. And in fact, I think the way that they preserve the stuff that isn't refrigerated is just taking all the oxygen out of the container, and they all go into like a dormant state. So, I don't know. That's all I got to say about bacteria.
There you go.
All right, what do we got?
Let's take a look here. Is it okay to dose alk, mag, and calcium or any Red Sea products before flow through carbon? I think his big question here is, Lynn's question is carbon going to remove any of that stuff?
Okay, is it okay to dose alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, or any Red Sea products before flow through carbon?
So, like, if your carbon chamber was here, or you had a bag of carbon here, and you're dosing your alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, is it okay to dose it here in the downward, in the upstream?
The carbon shouldn't remove any of those things.
Yeah.
In fact, in theory, all trace elements. Yeah, there's like iodine and stuff in some of those things. Yeah. So I'm thinking major elements, no problem. But for those trace colors and stuff, I probably wouldn't dose it into the same container as the carbon because it'll pull out iodine and stuff like that. So, but like major elements, calcium, alkalinity, no big deal, at all.
Yeah, solid.
All right.
Let's see.
What do you think about acro power? All right. So, David Turner, you just make me think of RT Turner. So RT had that stuff by the gallon, and he had a really awesome tank. Yeah, NPS tank that he was dosing it to.
With a doser hooked straight to it, too.
Yeah, on tap. So, I would say the acro power is probably the most time-tested, longest used, like a amino acid type product out there. I can't definitively say you're going to use it and create magic or anything like that. But, often I would say that when people, buy some of these products and then, you dose a little bit every Tuesday like it says or whatever, it says on these things, and you don't see any results or you thought you did, but you're not really sure. Yeah. And then if it's not producing results, eventually you just stop. And so there are so many acro power fans out there that have been using this stuff for years and super, super big fans. I won't say that means that it for sure is the most awesome thing out there, but is a strong indicator if really successful tank users are using this stuff for a really long time, recommending it to others, they find the value from it and they keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because there's things like calcium and alkalinity that are obvious, like, yeah, bam, man. I know for sure that is obvious. The rest of them get kind of murky, and murky people don't repeat. So if people are repeating it, usually it's a pretty good sign. All right.
Let's see what else we got here. Somebody asked us, and I forget where it is, how we feel about the accuracy salt. I think that's the two little fishies one.
Is that the little...
we gave it back to Charlie, yeah.
No, we gave it
Individual packets. Can't beat it. 5-gallon bucket. Well, that's all you need. Mix one packet, one bucket, you're good to go. Charlie uses it. It's really good stuff. So
I'll just be open and honest here, man. And like a lot of people won't like this, but like,
I think it's a smart way to do salt.
Oh yeah, I do too. But the thing I was gonna say is, you know what? For some reason, the salt has been like one of the things where like quality, like I don't care, throw it out the window. Like there's this conversation about like whether or not it's good or not, like is like just degenerated, and I just want the cheapest possible solution, right? And that can be like cheapest, in quality, or it can be cheapest in like usability. Right, and so in this case, it comes in little pouches that are pre-measured. I don't have to worry about stratification issues. I don't have to do anything. Just dump it in my 5-gallon bucket. I'm good. I don't have to measure it. I probably, after here a couple of times. I probably don't even have to use a refractometer if I don't want to, you know, because this thing is pre-measured. Yeah. And so what I'm saying here is, you know, forget the whole quality, you know, thing, or forget whether or not it's filling up my bucket full of red gunk or, you know, all kinds of muck or anything. Forget all that. I prefer, man, that the stuff comes in sizes that I can just dump in my container.
It's convenient.
Yeah, and at this point in time, there's so many containers out there that almost everybody uses the size of that, like, it'd be really nice if some of the other manufacturers of salt, like, gave you a 20-gallon pouch.
5, 20, 40, what have you.
And like it came in a box with 20-gallon pouches in it, and I just dumped that in there. I don't need that bucket anymore. I don't need so many buckets. And the bucket is probably one of the more cost-effective ways to get it to you. I mean, sometimes, and then, you know, individual pouches and stuff. But, like, I'll pay more. You know, like, not like dramatically more, but
$10 a month more.
10. Well, 10's a
less
lot,
than
man.
that.
Yeah, $5, man.
$5
For
a
I'll pay
month?
$5. But you know what? Like,
but that's probably the difference between a lot of these different salts anyway.
Yeah, it
probably
really
about $5 a month.
$5, yeah, per gallon. I mean, most of us are using probably 40 gallons a month. I shouldn't say most. 100-gallon tank, you're doing 10% water changes every day. You're probably
every week.
I'm sorry, every week. You know, it's 40 gallons.
Yeah.
You know, salt that you use in a month. So, you know, one of these buckets could last you 4 months. You know, and you know, if it's $20 more, that's $5.
Yeah.
If it probably wouldn't even be that much. $20 more if you just get the bags. It's probably $4 more. It costs $1 more to mix up my salt, and no stratification issues are a thing of the past, and that I don't have to measure this stuff out. I just buy the right size. So I'd love it if other people did it, but the accuracy for them in the little 5-gallon things, if you're only making 5 gallons of water, I'm done. As long I don't know what the parameters are on it, to be honest, but
I have to check.
I have to check too. I mean, because I don't make 5 gallons of water around here. We make
We've got
we make 250 over there. There's one over there. It's like 360, and then there's another one. It's another 200. So we don't use it that way. But let's pretend like this is just an office space, and none of these people here had reef tanks, and I was just the oddball here, and I had a little guy on my shelf. I don't want to like turn my office into some weirdo's office with RO systems hanging off every wall. So mixing up a bucket of water underneath my desk and filling it out, that'd be awesome option.
I like Crypto Reefers here on YouTube. Scroll up just a little bit. He says, for a new person getting into the hobby, besides the salt and equipment I need, what would be a must-have for my nano tank as far as additives? Salt water mix. I mean, we're nano tanks. So when I think of nano, for me, okay. So here's how I'd answer. For me, a nano tank, probably like 40 gallons and below, maybe even probably like 30 gallons and below what I would consider nano.
I mean, somebody's going to argue with you. I'm sure there's 4 people saying, no, it's 10.
It's 10, yeah. No. I mean, some of the sizes of tanks that we've kept before, 30, 40 is probably nano to me. In which case, you know, and anything usually under 30, 40 gallons, I don't see the need for, you know, dosing trace elements. Because my 10%, my 20% water change is probably only going to be, you know, like a 5-gallon bucket or 2 5-gallon buckets, which is completely manageable over like 20 or 40 gallon like brute trash cans and stuff like that. So the dilution from that is enough for me. I mean, I haven't sent in ICP tests on 10 gallons of water change on a 40-gallon tank every week or every 2 weeks. But I imagine that with a good quality salt, you're probably keeping up with trace elements just fine. So there's really no need to try to go in there and pay money to play mad scientist on a water volume that's like this versus a water volume that's like this or even larger, where maybe some of those larger swings or water changes may not keep up with. And I mean, the same goes as far as like, for your major elements, alkalinity, calcium, magnesium. I mean, definitely a kalkwasser to start, 2-part when that gets a little more, and then probably wouldn't put a calcium reactor on it at that point, but.
My best bit is I think that Alpha Reef thing is a good option.
That is a good option,
like
too.
It's just a one part and has trace elements, everything in it, and you probably use a very little amount. So I'd look into that Alpha Reef. There's actually a hit on here about. Honestly, on YouTube, it'd be convenient, but we all know that extra plastic packaging ends up floating in a real reef. So for the sake of a bit of extra work, let's keep our environment clean.
Valid?
Yeah, man. Sometimes you pass over that kind of stuff. you know, and other times you just kind of got to debate it. And you know, man, that like plastic bags, especially shopping bags and stuff like that, you know, are really bad for the ocean. You know, turtles eat it and all kinds of, you know, whales eat it and whatever. You know, open and honest, man, I think you're going to have to weigh that against, you know, 5-gallon buckets as well. They're like probably not great for the environment. You know, here in Minnesota, I'm not sure if any of my plastic buckets or bags are, you know, making to the sea, but like at the same time, man, a big white buckets that are eating up my garbage or bags, let's be honest, they're both not good, you know. Yeah, but I mean, I just like it when people are thinking that way.
Yeah.
So thank you for challenging us. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
All right, what else we got here?
Let's see.
All right,
What do you guys
we're going to try to keep these things to an hour.
Got 5 minutes.
You got 5 minutes, man, so think of the best questions you got. All right.
What do you guys dose for your refugium? Iron? What else? I don't think we don't specifically target the refugium here. On the 160, there was times in the Triton. You know, there was a few times when we were holding to the Triton method where it was, hey, you're deficient on iron, you're deficient on iodine, you're deficient on bromine, and there's a couple other ones too. And where they would say corrective dose, here's your corrective dose, and then we suggest this maintenance dose. But I think, you know, for that one in particular, for the iron. The maintenance dose was like 0.7 or 0.6 of a mil, in which case I'm probably not going to take the effort to go over to the tank and measure parts of a mil and then dose it to the tank on a daily basis. I would almost be comfortable to the point that, you know, next time I send in an ICP test and it tells me do a corrective dose of 20 mils, 30 mils, I'll dose that, and then I'll probably have the same next month. But no, I don't think... visually, was there something different about the macroalgae? I probably don't know.
This is what I'll say, though, is actually this is an interesting point. Is, you know, Triton has 2 methods. There's like other method and then the Triton method. Like in the Triton method, I mean, like part of it is like, you know, don't do water changes unless the thing tells you, but you don't have to follow that. You can do them. You can still do your water changes if you want. But what it is actually, if you really boil the whole thing down to what the core 7 is it's a, you know, 4-part calcium, alkalinity, and trace element thing designed to be used with the refugium.
Yeah, true.
Right? That's the only thing really.
Yeah.
So that one actually has elevated iron and like molybdenum and a couple other things in it to account for the fact that you are using a refugium on your tank and that these things are going to naturally be depleted much faster in a tank like this. So, you know, that's actually, I didn't really think about it that way, but like, that's the only one of the 2 parts out there that is specifically formulated for being used with the refugium.
That makes sense.
I will say the Brightwell people, I don't think it exists, but I've seen hints of it. Or they're going to create a product called like Keto Grow or something like that. You know, at first reference, it would sound like it was going to have like nitrogen and phosphorus, but that isn't the case. I mean, who would want to dose that to feed, you know, keto? But that would be like what you would naturally think of. But it actually doesn't. It has like molybdenum and iron and whatever in there to replace some of the elements that you would naturally uptake with your growing your keto and your refugium. So I don't think that exists quite yet. You know, maybe one of them is watching this video and they'll say, like, run over to the lab and say, hey, let's get that going. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that will probably come around. All right. Well, we got, like, 2 more minutes left. All right.
A question or two getting in there. Let's see.
All right, I don't know. Let's try this one. Help. We dosed no pox, got large cyano, large grain sand, swap sand bed to finer sand, no cyano. Now dose vinegar 2 months, uncontrolled diatom. Should this last this long? Okay, I'm just gonna go out here, man, and like, I mean, you know, like I love these live things because I can just say crazy stuff that I wouldn't normally say in one of these things. I could just say like, you know, opinions and stuff. And this is kind of the thing, man, where I just don't like dosing, like carbon dosing, man. Like, there's so many ways to remove excess nitrate and phosphate from the tank,
It's
man.
my last option. If I can't do it, if I can't control nitrates, phosphates, like refugium, we've proved, you know, right here, and we see it right here on this tank, that is 100%, if not too effective at some point in time at reducing nitrates and phosphates, and that's such an easy method, though. Before implementing carbon dosing, before implementing GFO, if I've exhausted water changes and refugium, then I don't personally.
I agree. You know, so here's the thing. It's not that it doesn't work, because carbon dosing absolutely works. There's no question.
Yeah.
It's that there's just like so many unknowns, and like somebody else is going to blow up on me for just even saying this phrase, Redfield ratio. You know, and not that you should run off with the Redfield ratio and think that everything needs to be in parallel to each other or whatnot, but like there is a ratio to organic carbon to phosphorus or to nitrogen to phosphorus in the ocean. And like I don't think that it like scales or anything. They need to follow it exactly or anything. But like, I mean, there's a reason why these things are like in balance with each other. And so like if like say when I'm dosing organic carbon in the tank, I get nitrogen and phosphorus down to like near zero. But let's say I'm overdosing, meaning I'm not dosing the perfect amount to get those down. What's happening to all that organic carbon in the tank? Like, is it building up? Is it like, I don't know. Like, people say all kinds of different things and nobody really knows. You know, Triton's actually coming out with organic carbon tests, you know, so maybe we'll get more vision into that. I've never seen it yet, and I don't know how it'll work. But, like, that'd be fun to see, especially for organic carbon dosers. But, like, you know, there's all this discussion out there, like, you know, does cyano or diatoms or dinos or whatever thrive in an environment where there's really high nitrogen, low phosphorus, or vice versa, or you know, tons and tons of organic carbon in the tank but no phosphorus? But like getting these ratios like totally out of whack, man, like, you know, probably aren't like good things. And so for most people, you know, I'm trying to imagine a world where you're dosing the right amount of carbon to your tank. Wow, that'd be really hard.
Yeah.
Because I know if I'm not dosing enough, like the phosphate and nitrogen, like will still rise.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm dosing too much, I don't know. You know, because it's going to be zero in either case. And the part that like a lot of people miss on this one entirely is the amount of organic carbon dose that you need to do to get it down is totally different than the amount that you would use to keep it down. Like to get all that excess carbon or phosphorus and nitrogen out of the tank versus just to manage the tiny amount that you add every day. And this is actually one of the reasons why if you're going to start carbon dosing, for me, like what I would do is use water changes to get it down already and then use the carbon dose to manage that now low level, right? Because, you know, that way I'm not trying to like correct this like extreme wrong, and who knows what's going to happen in this Wild West environment of microbes on you know, the surfaces of everything in the tank. Get it down naturally through water changes. I guess that's not natural, but get it down through water changes in a way that is in balance, you know, with all the other things. Then use the carbon dose to leave it down there. So I'd actually say that about a lot of different methods of maintaining, you know, various ways of maintaining nitrogen and phosphorus in the tank. You know, don't try to use the tool to hammer an existing problem. Water change it out, which works 100% of the time. Then use the new tool to maintain that thing, get it stable around that new thing instead of, you know, Wild West.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was a good. Whoa, I see one jiggling over here. What kind of additives are those in the white cups you're drinking out of?
This is Calm Chamomile Tezo tea. It's pretty good.
This is Tezo Orange Blossom. I'm a chronic tea drinker. I don't know, man. I can have 1 cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
2, man, sometimes, and then I just have a total freak out. You know, after that, you don't want to be around me, man. I'll be running around crazy. So, but I love hot drinks, so we drink a lot of tea around here. I do anyway. So, if you want to be cool like me, Tazo Orange Blossom.
It's good stuff.
I like those passion one things too.
I'm a berry blossom guy.
I know that. Like, you know, I like these fruity ones. So I don't know, man. I love Tivana too until they went out of business.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Let's grab that one real quick before we get out of here. Miss Umbra Hawk asks, "What size is the tank behind us?" There's a really good series that you should go check out if you haven't already. It's called 52 Weeks of Reefing. It's on our YouTube channel. It's the setup and progression over an entire year of this tank, and now we're going on almost 3 years of this tank. So,
hey, apparently chamomile has the most trace elements. So
there you go.
Awesome. All right, well, I think Randy, when's your video coming out this week?
Wednesday. Wednesday I'll have one on Red Sea and how to actually additives. So major element.
Oh yeah, you mix those guys up. Yeah, I remember that. We were doing that Friday. And then for everybody else on Friday, I'm doing the 4-month tank cycle. I get so many questions about this that I decided to move it up a little bit and get it in there for everybody. And you'll get to see, what the WWC method. I just actually word for word took Josh over at WWC's method and put it in there because it's the best representation I've ever heard of a method for cycling your tank. Took what we have here, meshed it together, produced something real solid for everybody that's replicable. And you know what? I just think people are going to be really excited to see it, especially because, it's like I just kind of. I felt a lot of pressure. So again, I love these live things. I felt a lot of pressure over the years, when you're starting up the tank to kind of help people achieve what they want, which is like a super fast tank, And you know what? I'm just done with that, man. I have no more pressure, guys. It's going to take us 4 months to get this tank ready for SBS corals, man. And not that somebody couldn't out there do it faster, because they absolutely could. It's that I want to produce a system that is repeatable by as many people as possible and produces the most consistent results. Never achieving perfect, but really. Trying to find a system where if you do this, the chances are pretty high. And I think the smartest thing I heard out of WWC on the whole thing, just a little preview, is wait until the tank is producing calcareous algae like coralline. If the tank isn't producing coralline algae in the tank, it isn't ready for calcifying corals. If it is, it's one of the strongest signs that you're ready to start adding corals to this thing. So they're going to really dive into that.
That makes it simple,
well, man, it's like they're not magic. We're not debating on the forums about this thing or that thing or the 8 tanks I set up or the 8 ones you like. It's a definable thing, man. This thing's growing coralline algae.
I'm ready.
Calcifying organisms are laying down a bicarbonate skeleton, and the best sign possible that this thing is ready. So I guess we'll see you on Friday with that one, and then we'll be back. What we call this, morning reef talks with Ryan and Randy, or afternoon or whatever it is next Monday.
See you next
All right,
Monday.
see you then.